Hello and welcome to Rando Rob. Each week on Rando Rob, I'll be showing and discussing one item from my large collection of collections. New shows appear every Monday, and throughout the week, I'll be adding older episodes of Rando Rob that were previously only available to my Patreon subscribers. You can watch episodes of Rando Rob on YouTube at youtube.com/Rob O'Hara. Just look for the Rando Rob playlist. Audio versions of the show are available on my website at podcast.robohara.com or through iTunes. Just search for Rando Rob. Thanks for watching or listening, and I hope you enjoy this vintage episode of Rando Rob. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Rando Rob. It is Monday, the day after Sunday, and also the day after Father's Day. So to all of you who are fathers or have a father, I hope you had a good day. I hope you were able to celebrate that with either your kids or your dad or both. My wife comes from a family, I did too, so it's kind of a bad combination where we celebrate a lot with food. And so we had my dad over yesterday morning for breakfast, and we cooked up a big breakfast of waffles and scrambled eggs. Not scrambled eggs, sunny side up eggs. And bacon and sausage and all kinds of stuff, and had a good big breakfast. Then we did a bunch of cool stuff. We went to lunch. I went to lunch. My kids went. And it appeared like they wanted to be there, which is always a plus, right? It kind of stinks when people come to visit or spend time on a holiday or something. And both my kids live here, so it's not like they had to travel far. But it's always nice when it seems like they want to be partaking in the holiday. So that was nice. And we went to this art museum thing called Factory Obscura, which probably you've never heard of in Oklahoma City, and it is somehow related to Meow Wolf, which is in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which you've probably also never heard of. But it's just this really weird, bizarre group of artists who put things together in the form of a theme. And Meow Wolf is all centered around a story about how there was a tear, and basically in the space-time continuum, which opened up portals to the multiverse, which sounds pretty complicated. But when you go there, you explore a house, and there's all kinds of weird clues and stuff. But there's so much weird stuff to see and do inside the house that you don't have to really know the story or even care about the story. In fact, the first time we went, we've been twice. The first time we went, we didn't really know that much about the story at all, and it wasn't until we came back from vacation that we started researching online and finding all this stuff out. And so when we went back the second time, we started really digging into, it's kind of like a real life mystery where there's no real answer. It's just trying to figure out what happened to these people that lived in this house. It's a very strange, bizarre art experience. And so they have built something similar in Oklahoma City called Factory Obscura. It's in an art building that I believe is, or at least I know that it was, I'm not sure that it still is, but the actual physical building was owned by Wayne Coyne, I believe is how you say his name, the from the Flaming Lips, who's from Oklahoma. And I went there before it was Factory Obscura, when it was just a art gallery, and there's all kinds of weird art in different rooms. There was a room inside called the Womb Room, which when you went in, everything was pink, and there were beanbags to sit on the floor, and all kinds of pink and red pulsing lights and stuff like that. And they were playing a heartbeat type sound. This is some pool hair. Our pool is the pool is finished, and so I was in the pool earlier and put a hat on. Yeah. That place was crazy before, and now the theme is audio is a mixtape. And so as you walk from room to room, all the different rooms have something to do with the joy of sharing music, but it's not always exactly clear what you're seeing or what's going on. It's just very strange. It's very difficult to explain until you've been there. But And then again, it's like Meow Wolf. It exists on multiple levels of entertainment for young kids, and even my kids did this. They will give you a clipboard with a checklist of things to look for, and you can, like, there's a gumball machine hidden somewhere, there's a carousel hidden somewhere, in the art that's in the place. And so the kids kind of go from room to room looking for that stuff, while the adults kind of might look for deeper meanings in some of the artwork. But it was very interesting. And there's also a lot of areas in there that's not really made for adults. There were a lot of little cubby holes and things to crawl in where kids could go and just sit in these little padded rooms and stuff where the adults really couldn't get to them. So I thought that was pretty cool too. But anyway, so we had a good Father's Day. And that really rounded out, my vacation. I was gone for a week. Unfortunately for the podcast, it was Wednesday to Wednesday, which kind of spanned 2 shows. So now I'm behind, and I'm, frantically putting together notes for this week's show. And then once we got home, we had taken off Thursday, Friday. And then Friday, then we got notified that Friday got changed from annual leave, which is what I had taken, to an annual holiday because of Juneteenth, which was very interesting for me. I've heard of Juneteenth. I honestly did not know that much about it. It's not something I ever heard about in school, not here in Oklahoma. So what I do know is just from what friends or coworkers have told me, over the past, gosh, I mean, I probably haven't known about Juneteenth for 5 years, And so anyway, now that it's a federal holiday, I officially got Friday off with pay. So I thought, the least I could do was look it up on Wikipedia and read, what the day is about, and what it's, intended to commemorate and things like that. So it was kind of a learning experience for me. So we were off on Friday, and then we had the weekend. Of course, like I said, we came home and the pool's finished. So we spent a lot of time over the past couple of days hanging out in the pool, swimming. Of course, it's a hot commodity right now, new swimming pool. So everybody's swimming 2 to 3 times a day, going and jumping in and floating around for a while. And so we're doing a lot of laundry of towels at the moment. Towels seem to be, there's always a towel shortage. So we'll definitely have to get some beach towels for out by the pool. And every time we do a load of laundry, I think we'll have to just throw a few towels in at a time, because that seems to be piling up right now at the moment. So anyway, while I was on vacation, we drove from Oklahoma to Florida, which was about 16 hours, but we stopped on the way there. We stopped in Memphis, and on the way back we stopped in New Orleans. Now the Memphis part is about 8 hours away, so it's like halfway. So we drove halfway to Memphis, the next day drove the rest of the way to Florida. By the way, if you're not following me on Facebook or anything like that, or reading my blog, my tire got slashed on my car while I was in Memphis. So that gave us about an 8-hour delay. It basically took a whole day of the vacation side. We were planning on arriving at 4 p.m. and having the rest of the day in Florida that day, but instead we arrived around midnight. So we lost about 8 hours due to someone slashing my tire in the valet parking lot, and they said, well, park at your own risk, which is really irritating. And then on the way back, we went through New Orleans. And I've been to New Orleans before. I've been to Memphis several times. But I guess on New Orleans, we've always been on a nicer part of town, because we actually went to downtown on Bourbon Street, and I didn't feel safe most of the time we were there. And of course, we were constantly being approached by people asking us for money. And there was a guy doing a shtick that said he would pay me money if he could, or he asked me if I would pay him money if he could tell me where I got my shoes. And after several minutes of telling him no, he finally said he would tell me anyway. And then he said, "You got your shoes on your feet." And then we didn't make it to the other end of the block, and someone else tried the same thing on me. And so I cut him off. I said, "Actually, I'm an expert. I can tell you where you got your shoes." And the guy immediately walked away. And then One lady just walked up. She didn't have a stick. She just said, "Hey, give me $1." I go, "No." She goes, "Okay." So anyway, but the other downside of stopping in New Orleans is that it was only like 4.5 hours from where we were in Florida in the Panhandle. So that left us with 12 hours to drive on the last day of the trip, which was a long day. We took two cars. My son drove my truck because some of his friends went, and my daughter rode with them. So he had to drive the whole last day, drive the 12 hours by himself. So that was sure a long day for him. My wife and I switched off. Like every 2 hours, we just that's kind of what we do now. Is about every 2 hours on road trips. We stop, top off the tank, and switch drivers, and so that way nobody gets exhausted. And during your 2 hour shift, you're kind of responsible for getting your own rest, and because your shift is coming up soon. So anyway, on road trips, I've talked. I think I did a blog. I'm sure. Well, I think I did a podcast episode actually about road trips, but one of the things about road trips when I was younger, I always wanted to get a souvenir. I'm a thing kind of guy, and I would always buy stuff on road trips. But the thing is, you start getting stuff that just clutters up your house. You just end up buying, just crap. I mean, at least like if it's clothes, you can wear it. Like if you buy for a while, I was buying shirts from Hard Rock Cafe, and it would be Hard Rock Cafe Chicago or Hard Rock Cafe. There was one in Memphis, in New Orleans. So you would say, "Oh, that's where I was," and that shirt would remind you of it. So that's okay. But just buying just random stuff at especially at those souvenir shops and stuff, it's just junk, and you don't get any use out of it, and it just sits on a shelf, and then eventually your shelves are full, and then eventually your rooms are full and your house is full. It's kind of where I'm at in my life, and so anyway, many years ago when my kids were young, we went on a cruise, and we were at the gift shop on the cruise ship looking at different things, and there were t-shirts and little miniatures of the boat or the ship, all these different things. But we saw coffee mugs that had the name of the ship on it, and we were like, well, that's cool, if we got a coffee mug, and my wife and I drink a lot of coffee. We don't make a pot every day, but we at least drink one cup a day, and some days we'll finish off a pot, before we start work, which is pretty early in the morning. So that kind of started a tradition of us buying coffee mugs when we're on trips, and I just really enjoy that part because it's something that we use, and we have a little display in our dining room where all our coffee mugs hang on the wall, and we probably have twice as many. Let's see, 15. That holds 15. That's another 15. So we have 30 cups in the kitchen or in the dining room, and then I probably have another 30 out in storage in the garage. Because what happens is, you start off with all these coffee mugs that are just like a plain white mug or a plain red mug or one that says, world's best boss or whatever, stuff like that. Just generic kind of cups. But slowly we take those out of circulation as we replace them in. Now the problem is we have about 30 that are all from different trips, so we'll have to rotate those in and out too as well. We have a couple of rules, and one rule came from my dad, which is he said, I never buy a coffee cup that's black on the inside because you can't tell if it's clean or dirty. Now, I have a couple that are black on the inside, but every time I pick one of those up, I think about what he says, and I always look in there to make sure, kind of get the light just right to see if I can see that the mug is clean inside, because if the mug's white inside or colored inside, you could easily tell if it's clean. But anyway, so on this trip, I bought 3 coffee mugs, and one of them is not here. One of them, I think, literally just says Florida on it, which was the first one I bought because I wasn't sure we were going to find any other cool mugs. And then I found 2 other cool mugs along the trip. And so the first one I want to show you, which is a really cool mug, is this one from the Ron John Surf Shop. You can see it's got little green on the logo here. It's kind of like a color rainbow thing. It goes green to yellow, and then there's some blue down there. And so this is kind of what I was talking about on the inside. This one isn't black on the inside, but that's it's almost like a rainbow kind of tie-dyed stuff. Now, I'm always a little worried about coffee mugs, with stuff on them. Like, are you going to be able to... cup has to be, or a mug has to be machine washable for me. I'm not going to wash it by hand. Not because I'm too good to wash things by hand, but we have a dishwasher, and so we just have a system. Like, things pile up in the sink, we put them in the washer, and off they go. So if I got something, we've ordered a couple of those, and most of them are okay, but we ordered a couple of mugs from either Zazzle or Cafe Press or one of those type places that faded and everything peeled off, and then you just got to throw them away, because I don't remember which one one or two out of 30 need to be hand washed, so but this one I can't really tell. It doesn't feel like it's something that's on there. It feels like it's painted in there, but yeah. So on one of the days during our vacation, we went over to, we were about 20 miles away from Panama City, Florida, which is a big tourist area. And we went over to Panama City and we saw the Ron John surf shop. Now, I've tried to go surfing one time, and it was, we went on vacation in Texas, and I believe it was Galveston, and the waves were like 2 inches tall. There was no possible way to surf. And this place rented, Jeff went with us. It was a family vacation. We were about 15. And this place rented us surfboards, knowing good well that there's no way to surf out there. But we paddled around, and we had a good time, But more for me, like when I was a kid, I was big into skateboarding. I did a podcast about skateboarding, and all these things, when I say, hey, I did a podcast, if you haven't heard that one, just go to podcast.robohair.com and click on the top link on the side under You Don't Know Flack, and you can see all the topics. So you can find one on skateboarding, you can find one, I believe there's one on road trips, and there's a big one about cruises if you want to hear that. But in middle school and high school, man, I was big into skateboarding. And you would see all these stickers, like Santa Cruz always had stickers, and Vision Streetwear. And you would always see these Ron John Surf Shop stickers, and you would always see ads in magazines, like skateboard magazines and stuff. You would see ads for Ron John. And we never had any of those stores in Oklahoma. We had a couple of independent skateboard shops, but nothing like these big chains that existed on the coast, in California and Florida. So when I saw the shop, I was like, oh man, we gotta go in there. And on the let me see if I can pull this up while I'm talking here. On the Florida vacation, on the outside of the building, there were a bunch of surfboards set up, and like that you could get pictures taken with and stuff. That was really all it was. And so I got my picture taken outside of the let me see where I can find here real quick. All right, here we go. Open with photos. All right, let's do it this way. So this is a little bit of the area that's down in Panama City. Let's see. Left monitor photos. Here we go. So this is my wife with a statue of a sea turtle that was in Panama Beach. And this is this big pier park, and there was all these little restaurants, and there's a pier that went way out into the ocean. And we walked over there, and then it was like $5 to walk out on the pier, and we go, nah, we saw it from here, it's all right, I don't need to pay the $5. And then this is this little guy is across the street. This was this restaurant here. There was a whole bunch of fun restaurants, and I always take pictures of goofy faces and stuff like that, because I always think, oh, that will be I could use that as an avatar on a forum or something like that. Anyway, this is outside of or the Ron John surfboard shop, and they have these surfboards where you can get your picture, posed behind them. So my wife, we took a bunch of pictures of her, and then a bunch of pictures of me standing behind the surfboards and stuff. I'm getting ready to make a surfboard, basically for decoration to put on my building out back to face the pool side. So I was looking at the way that they did the stripes and stuff on these. It doesn't look too hard to do. I'm going to cut out a piece of wood. It won't be convex like these are, but I'll use a router, Dremel, or something and make the edges a little bit round. Anyway, this is a bunch of the clothes that they had inside of Ron John. I mean, of course, big, hats and shirts and all kinds of stuff like that. These are all helmets, Ron John helmets, which I thought was kind of cool. Back towards the skateboarding section. This is just some of the surfboards that they had. I just thought it was cool. They were all just lined up, all different, colors and designs. And I guess some of them are different brands, too. So I thought that was cool. And that's it. This was at a place next door we went to that had beach stuff for your house, and that was a big Jaws bedspread and stuff. Everything there is like every store just has beach themed stuff, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, but yeah, I just really enjoyed Ron John. I ended up getting a couple of magnetic can openers that said Ron John on them somewhere, and I got some stickers. I don't know what I'll put the stickers on yet, but the important thing to me was the coffee mug, which hasn't been broken in yet, but I will definitely be drinking some coffee from the Ron John Surf Shop coffee mug. And so after we were done in Florida, we came back and we stopped in New Orleans. And one of the things that my daughter had found, places that she wanted to stop, was this place called the Museum of Death. Now, I did write a blog post about this on robohair.com, but if you haven't read it, the Museum of Death is actually based in California, but they opened a smaller ancillary museum in New Orleans. So there's only the two locations, and the New Orleans one apparently is much smaller and has a smaller subset of items on display. Now, when you go in, the Museum of Death is divided into thirds. The museum is divided into thirds. I'm going to say the whole place, man, had to be 2,000 square feet or smaller. I mean, it was not really a large place. But the first third was all about skeletons, and they had several skeletons on display. They had some human skeletons. They had a horse skeleton, an alligator skeleton, stuff like that. The middle third was my favorite part of the museum. It was all about serial killers. And so they had some interesting things on display. They had, for example, but I will say this, they would have like a small something on display, and then they would fill the wall around it. So the display looked much larger than it actually was. So for example, they had a wall dedicated to the O.J. Simpson murder case, and they had all these magazine covers covering the O.J. trial. They had a TV that was showing CNN footage from the O.J. trial, newspaper headlines, and just all different sorts of stuff related to the case. And then on this little area, of course, encased in glass, was a piece, a lock, a small section, a lock, I guess, of Nicole Brown Simpson's hair from the murder scene. So it had some blood on it, and it was hair, and it was in a glass display, and everything that they have there is real, but if you were to just hang that on the wall, I mean, you'd have an entire empty wall with one little thing. So they have really filled in the area around that. They had a lot of Charles Manson related stuff. They had a lot of artifacts that had come from Spawn Ranch, which is where Manson's family was hanging out in the middle of Death Valley. There was a couple of pieces from some of the dune buggies that they were driving around out there. There were shingles from Spawn Ranch and some dirt from out there. They had one of Charles Manson's original, I say original, they had one of Charles Manson's prison shirts that he had autographed, so it's part of his prison uniform. And some of his original artwork and stuff like that. So, it's a weird feeling to be like 6 inches away from, like, it's not like you're looking at a picture of something. It's like, man, Charles Manson painted this picture and now I'm looking at it. You're very close to the source material. So they had a lot of letters and paintings like from Henry Lee Lucas and John Wayne Gacy. So, and they had prison letters from those guys and some of their original artwork and stuff like that. So a lot of interesting, if you're into kind of macabre kind of stuff and serial killer and true crime stuff, they had a lot of interesting stuff. And then the back third of the museum was all about like autopsies and, then they had a little theater in the back that was showing like kind of like Faces of Death kind of footage, not the fake stuff, but the real stuff, like 8mm news footage of, people that have been in accidents and stuff like that. It really didn't do anything for me. I think the older you get, this is my theory, but I think the older you get, the more valuable life becomes. So when you're a kid and you're like, oh man, I want to see, all this footage of people that have been, jumped out of buildings and landed, and there's that morbid curiosity. But the older I get, it's like, I don't want to see that, man, because that was, somebody's dad or somebody's kid or whatever, and it just makes me sad. So, but the autopsy area was interesting. But the most interesting about that area of the museum was they had one of Dr. Jack Kevorkian's original suicide machines, these machines that he built to help people, take or end their own lives. And the first one that he built used a combination of chemicals, and he could only use it twice because he lost his doctor's license, and then he couldn't get the chemicals anymore. So he had to make another kind. He made a second one that used carbon monoxide. But that the first one that he built was called the Thanatron, I believe, and I Googled it afterwards, or looked it up on Wikipedia, and it says, I read about it, and then it says this is currently in the possession of the Museum of Death. So it's like, I mean, it is the real thing, and that's another thing that's creepy to be looking at something and you're like, someone used this, two people used this to end their own lives. It's very, very strange feeling. So. None of that explains why I decided I needed to own this, which is a coffee mug from the Museum of Death in New Orleans. And they had some different ones, and not all of them. I mean, they had some kind of gory looking ones and just different goofy stuff, but I thought this one did it. And then on the back it says, have a great life, which is, and plus, like, I'm right-handed. I think, obviously most people are right-handed, except for everybody in this family is left-handed, except for me. My wife and both my kids are left-handed. But if you're right-handed and you're drinking from this mug, and it's like, have a great life, and people go, that's a nice mug. Oh, yeah, it came from the Museum of Death. But, so I enjoyed getting both of those mugs. They will go into regular rotation in the kitchen. They're not, you don't put them up on a shelf around here. I mean, they get drank out of, and occasionally they get broken and stuff happens to them. But, now that I think about it, I know that I said on the cruise, the first one that we bought on a road trip was a Peeps mug, because when we went to, the way home from our cruise, which left through Seattle, and we drove, and on the way home, we stopped at the Mall of America in Minnesota. And inside the Mall of America, in the middle area where all they have, it's the largest mall in the continental United States. Now, it's not the largest mall in North America. The Edmonton Mall is larger. But this is the largest mall in the U.S., and in the middle is like an amusement park. There's a roller coaster and a log ride and all kinds of different stuff like that, a huge arcade. And they had a Peeps store where you could go in and buy, all you could buy was Peeps, candy and T-shirts and things like that. And they had mugs. And so I bought a Peep mug. And this is a funny story. When we got home from the road trip, I opened it up and the mug was broken. So it got broken. And I mentioned it on Twitter, and someone who followed me knew someone who worked for the Peep Corporation, and they reached out to me and they sent me a replacement mug. It was really super cool. So that was really kind of the beginning of the coffee mug tradition on trips. So now there are two more, one for the Museum of Death and one for Ron John Surf Shop. So I love vacations and I love road trips, but I am of the age where when we get home, I need a vacation from my vacation. And so that was kind of what the end of the week was last week, was to just relax, sit down, regroup. And now it's back to work. I worked past tense, worked today. And now it's time to get back on the grind, get back on the podcast microphone. So thank you guys. I listened to a bunch of podcasts on the road and had my spiral notebook. You know, I take notes on my phone. I take notes using Voxer. I take notes on all different kinds of apps and different things. But a lot of times when I just have a blank piece of paper and a pen in my hand, ideas will come out. And so I was making notes about shows that I wanted to do for You Don't Know Flack and Sprite Castle. So there's no shortage of material. There's a lot of ideas in the chute. So, and there will definitely be a new episode in the next couple of days coming out. So watch for that. And it's great to be back. And I will talk to all you guys soon.